Game number 24 for the Boston Celtics, where they continue their 5-game homestand by welcoming the Phoenix Suns for a Saturday matinee at TD Garden. Welcome into the CLNS pregame report. I'm your host, Josue Pavone, alongside Gerald Bourguet, Suns reporter for Fansided's Hoop Habit, and he's here to preview this matchup. Hey, Gerald, thanks for checking in.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So the Suns entered today's game losers of 4 of their last 5 outings. I mean, it's been an up and down kind of start of the season, which is what you can expect coming from such a young team. But tell me some of the bright spots you've seen so far. What's something that you can say has impressed you? Give me a player, actually, that's not named Devin Booker, who surprised you this season.
That's not named Devin Booker. That one might be a little bit tougher. Actually, I'm going to go off the beaten path a little bit. I could say TJ Warren because he is flying under the radar pretty heavily, actually, for a guy who's putting up the numbers that he is as kind of the second option behind Booker. But I'm actually going to say Alex Len on this one, just because he hasn't gotten his fair shake at the starting job. They've been giving it to Tyson Chandler just to kind of keep the veteran happy, I think. And then they make this trade to get rid of Bledsoe, and they bring in yet another center who they have to play because, if they want to move him as an expiring contract, they got to give him minutes. But, Alex Len is quietly leading all reserves in rebounds, averaging 9.4 a game. Only 9 points a game and under 50% shooting. But, 2 nights ago in Chicago, or a few nights ago in Chicago, he had that 18-rebound game off the bench against the Bulls. Like, he's doing everything he can to get minutes. They're just not coming for him, which is unfortunate because he's an unrestricted free agent this summer. And the Suns need to kind of figure out what they've got with him and whether they want to re-sign him.
Yeah, Gerald, there's definitely a logjam up front in Phoenix. I mean, Tyson Chandler, Alex Len, Greg Monroe, you brought these guys up. But out of those 3 guys, who do you think is the odd man out? Sounds like you think it's Greg Monroe. Is this a buyout situation we're looking at? Is he going to be traded? And if so, when is that going to happen? Could it be within the next month or so? Is it sometime down the road? Because let's face it, I mean, you know how it is. Before you know it, it's going to be trade deadline season. And, of course, the Phoenix Suns will be up against it and trying to make that decision.
Right. That's a great question. And honestly, your guess might be as good as mine at this point because from an on-court standpoint, interim head coach Jake Triano has really mixed up the minutes as far as, which of the 3 is going to be the odd man out on a given night. And then off the court, they've got a couple of deadlines coming up. December 6th or 8th, I believe, is when they need to figure out or they need to free up a roster spot for Mike James because his 2-way contract will need to be guaranteed by them if he's going to continue playing with the Suns. And then there's that December 15th deadline coming up where free agents who were signed over the summer are eligible through trade. And I think that's when things will heat up as far as Greg Monroe trade talks. I think McDonough was probably looking at dealing Monroe out of those 3 just because he's an expiring contract and, maybe the Suns take on some salary or try and get a pick or something, decent out of the cap space that they're going to free up for some other team by sending Monroe to that squad. Tyson Chandler could probably help a contender, but with, 2 years left on his contract, it might be harder to move him. And then Alex Len, they really do want to see what they have in Len, so I feel like he's going to be prioritized moving forward. It's just a matter of figuring out where they can move Monroe, whether they want to move Chandler, those sorts of things before we can get to, Alex Len starting center.
This edition of the Celtics pregame report is brought to you by DraftKings.com. Head to DraftKings.com and use the promo code CLNS for a free sign-up with your first deposit for your share of $10,000 in total prizes. You can win some serious cash. Head over to DraftKings.com, use the promo code CLNS, and get yourself paid. Hey, Gerald, there's been plenty of changes in Phoenix like we've already been talking about. I mean, there was the firing of head coach Earl Watson and, of course, the Eric Bledsoe trade with the Bucks. So this is a double question. 1, is Jake Triano a coach you see sticking around? And 2, do you think Phoenix should seriously consider bringing in David Fizdale?
Great questions. I think that if the Suns are convinced that David Fizdale could be their guy, they need to go after him now. Before teams like, maybe the Bucks or maybe the Clippers or maybe somebody else has a head coaching vacancy if their season don't go according to plan. He's going to be a hot commodity when some of those spots open up and the head coaching carousel starts to spin. But, Triano has done a very good job. The only question I have with him is, he said himself he's not sure that he wants to do this after this season. They brought him on to be the head coach for the rest of the season, and he said, he doesn't like doing the media stuff. He doesn't like doing, meeting with the boosters or the ticket holders and stuff like that. Like, he just wants to focus on basketball. So I wouldn't be surprised if he'd be willing to step down after the season's over if the Suns brought in somebody else. And for a team that had a bad experience with Earl Watson as far as bringing up an interim head coach to the head coach without doing their due diligence outside of that, I think they might do a little more of an extensive search this time. But yeah, I definitely think that Fizdale could be the kind of guy that would make sense here. I don't know if McDonough's actually interested in bringing him on board, but I think he'd be great for the youth movement and possibly for the long term as well.
Real quick, give me an update on the two prospects at the 4, Dragan Bender and Marquise Chris, because the numbers don't wow me, but of course the eye test can always tell a different story. Tell me about those two guys.
Yeah, that's the problem with them is that they both kind of pass the eye test, but they're not really doing much to prove that they deserve the starting job. Triano's kind of waffling between the two of them right now as far as minutes. He does like Bender coming off the bench with that second unit. And Bender's done a great job spreading the floor. He's shooting, it's only 36.5%, but that's pretty good considering where he was at last year and considering he's only 20 years old. I think the thing with Bender is his impact doesn't really show up on the stat sheet much because he's a defensive player. He's great at switching on to ball handlers off screens and moving his feet, but he's not a good rebounder for a 7-footer. He's not very aggressive on offense, and he's a little turnover prone for a low usage player. As far as Chris is concerned, he's still got that athleticism. He can also spread the floor fairly well, but he makes a lot of mistakes. He gambles going for blocks and gets into foul trouble pretty quickly. And he's not a great rebounder either. He's better than Bender, but unfortunately that's not saying much. And his three-point shot has been off a little bit. He showed signs after the All-Star break of being that kind of stretch 4 they're hoping he'll become, but it's been kind of like around 32% this year from deep. So not great. Both of them are still really young. Bender's 20 and Chris is 20 as well. So they're going to get better, but for now they're definitely experiencing why they're called growing pains.
All right, prediction time. Who wins tonight? Or today, I should say.
Definitely the Celtics. I'm going to say, unless they completely overlook their opponent and Booker goes for another 70, which, he's done it before, but I wouldn't expect it again. I'm going to say Celtics, probably by double digits, given that I think it's about halfway through the Suns' current road trip, so.
I tell you, man, I've been covering this team for a couple of years now, and that night just stands out so much. It was incredible because you just didn't get that feeling that he was going to go off for that many until you looked up at the scoreboard and you're like, wait a minute. Booker has 35 points right now? Wait a minute. He's going, okay, I think he's going to get 50. Wait a minute. He's going to get 70. Stop fouling him. Stop sending him to the free throw line. He just kept going and going.
Watson, anything's possible, apparently.
Yeah, that too. And he had no regrets afterwards when he was speaking to us. He's like, nope, no regrets at all. He was feeling it, left him in there. Hey, I probably would have done the same. All right, he is Gerald Bourguet, Suns reporter for Fansided's Hoops Habit. You can follow him on Twitter at Gerald, Bourguet. That's Bourguet, at Gerald Bourguet. Gerald, we got to do this again sometime, man. I appreciate you for coming by.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Have a good one.
Well, that's going to do it for this edition of the Celtics pregame report. Make sure you check out the Garden Report after the game on CLNS Media's YouTube channel for all the raw and uncut videos from the locker room and the press table directly after the game. Weekday shows air on the Celtics Newsfeed channel on iTunes, Stitcher, and the CLNS Media mobile app. For today's Boston Celtics pregame report with Josue Pavone, this is Josue Pavone signing off.